Hello and welcome to Das MMA. I am Joel, and here we are today discussing UFC 259, the main event between Jan Blachowicz and Israel Adesanya for the light heavyweight championship. Starting off with some stats, current light heavyweight champion is 38 years of age, whereas Israel Adesanya, the current middleweight champion and the challenger to the light heavyweight championship of Jan, is 31 years of age. Jan has a record of 27 wins and 8 losses. Israel Adesanya has a perfect record of 20 wins and no losses. Israel has a 2-inch advantage. Israel is 6 feet 4, whereas Jan is 6 feet 2. Up to the first point, the stances. Israel is very heavy on his switching stances. That means there are usually two types of stances. That is the southpaw and the orthodox. The orthodox has the right hand as the lead hand, whereas southpaws have the left hand as the lead hand.
Well, hello, Editor Joel here. I mixed my left and rights up. Sorry.
The punches you land, the counters you use, the hooks you throw, the uppercuts you throw, all depends on the stance you take. And a switching stance basically means that a fighter switches between these two stances as the match goes on. Jan is very traditional in his fighting. Jan is a pressure fighter, which means he moves in forward to pressure the fighter into going backwards. So, say if I am Jan Blachowicz, I, as a fighter, will put the pressure on you, will keep walking forward, forward, and forward until you are against the cage, and then I could land a few hooks on you. I can shoot in for a takedown. A takedown is basically you grab someone by the legs and take them down on the ground to choke them, submit them, or ground and pound, hit them on the ground until they're knocked out or they give up. Izzy, however, is notorious for his defensive footwork. And by that, I mean he can fight walking forwards or backwards. Uh, the proof to this would be basically most of his matches in the UFC, be it against Marvin Vettori, an aggressive fighter who was coming towards Izzy, but Izzy used his smart footwork and his ducking and weaving. Be it Derek Brunson, a wrestler who is also a good striker, not a great striker, but a good striker who has power in his hands, or be it his most tough fight, Kelvin Gastelum. Paulo Costa, Brady trying to push him from the first round itself, but he could not land anything because Israel was so persuasive. Israel was so good in his defense that Paulo could not see any openings to his fighting. On the other hand, Jan Blachowicz is a very traditional, no bullshit fighter. No matter how much ever you try and punish Jan Blachowicz, be it with the calf kicks or the punches, Jan comes in forward. Jan will always make it a point to pressure you till the point you break or till the point you don't know what to do. Some of the best examples for this would be Luke Rockhold, an former middleweight champion who came up to light heavyweight. Luke Rockhold is very notorious for his kicks. His leg kicks are very powerful and have crippled people, quite honestly. Jan made it a point to check every single hook, every single kick. And by checking, I mean blocking it with your legs. It's a it's mainly used in Muay Thai, but it's also being used in other martial arts now. Strikes landed per minute for Israel Adesanya, it is 4.1. For Jan Blachowicz, it is 3.49. Now, these stats might sound impressive and they might not sound like much of a difference, but you have to remember, Izzy chooses his strikes. Jan throws in a lot, and Jan often uses his punches, even if it does not land, to pressure the person backwards. Izzy uses his punches mainly because he wants to land it on them. So the damage accumulated over the match makes a very big difference. Now, the real difference that comes in is in the takedowns. Israel Adesanya has had zero takedowns in his entire career. He is not one to usually shoot down and take someone down or fight with someone on the ground by choice. He is more of a striking master, and of course, he has a striking masterpiece every single time. Jan Blachowicz, however, a takedown average of 1.1. Takedown accuracy, of course, Israel Adesanya has zero because he has no takedowns, and Jan Blachowicz has a 52% takedown accuracy as per the stats, which means that 1 out of 2 times he will take someone down, which is a dangerous stat. Seeing as how Jan has the weight advantage, and I'll come back to that later. takedown defense, however, Israel Adesanya, the challenger, has an 86% takedown defense. Now, this is very large considering how many people have tried takedowns on him and the caliber of people who have tried takedowns on him. Joel Romero, an Olympic level wrestler who has won the silver medals. Against Joel Romero, Izzy blocked almost all of his takedowns. Just one takedown was successful, and even through that, Izzy stood right up in the next second. So Joel really couldn't do anything. He just scored points on that. Common points between the two fighters. I consider both of these fighters to be very heaty, as in they have the snapping of in their punches. So say take Israel Adesanya against Paulo Costa. Izzy will wait, he will wait for the right moment, but when they have to fire, they'll snap and they will finish the match as fast as they can. Same with Jan. Jan will wait, but when he sees the chance, he will pounce back. He'll bounce back and definitely finish you off. Both of them are knockout artists, in my opinion. In their recent careers, they've been knocking people out. For Jan, it has been Luke Rockhold, Dominic Reyes, and it's all one punch knockouts. It's all one punch knockouts. Against Luke, it was a left hook. Against Corey, it was a right hook. And again, against Reyes, it was a left cross. Not even a hook, a cross. And the way he fires it is he snaps. He does not take it back and outstretch it. So he is not putting his full power in it. And yet he manages to knock someone out. If that is not testament to Jan's power, I don't know what is. And I feel that will be one of the biggest points in Jan's play. Jan's a pressure fighter, has a very closed and firm stance. So you won't see Jan doing a lot of flashy movements or ducking and weaving. Well, he does duck and weave, but not as aggressively as Izzy does. He has most of his knockouts in a close range fighting stance. So, say if he's in a clinch situation where basically you hold someone up with underhooks or you press them against the cage, that is a clinch situation. Mainly when people are escaping his clinch situation. But as people escape the clinch from Jan finds his opening, it clicks in his head, and he goes in for one punch and they're knocked out. In his last three fights, this has been the case. Yeah, people escaping from his clinch and they getting knocked out. So Izzy has to look out for the clinch and find a workaround through it. Of course, he has one punch knockout power. That is pretty obvious. He is currently on a four-fight win streak. He is a black belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy, which means that he has the higher prowess if the fight goes to the ground. Although I don't believe it will go to the ground, but if ever it does, Jan has more experience in it. And considering how he is older than Izzy and has had more fights in MMA, one would say that Jan has the experience advantage over here. If Izzy wins this belt against Jan Blachowicz, he'll be the fifth person in the entirety of the UFC to win two belts. Of course, the first being Conor McGregor, and the others being Amanda Nunes, Daniel Cormier, Henry Cejudo. And if Izzy wins, he's the fifth. He'll be the first double champ to win belts in the middleweight and the light heavyweight division. Izzy, of course, has the reach advantage, 80 inches, 2 inches more than Jan Blachowicz. And although 2 inches does not make a lot of difference because there are ways to cover it up, for Izzy, this makes a really good advantage because Jan and Izzy are very jab heavy fighters. A jab is a snappy punch to keep distance or to disrupt someone's eyesight. Izzy being so gifted in his defensive footwork, all thanks to his kickboxing record, his kickboxing record of 75 wins and 5 losses. He has in himself ingrained the fact as to how he has to work around people, find holes in their game, in their striking game, and fight against them and beat them at their own game. So when it comes to experience, yes, Izzy has the higher striking experience, but when it comes to MMA, which also includes ground and pound, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, submission, grappling, wrestling, Jan has the better experience. Very analytical fighter, insanely good footwork, like I mentioned. Now, by analytical fighter, I mean Izzy can find his way around someone very easily. Take, for example, Marvin Vettori. That is the only split decision that Israel Adesanya has on his record. His only split decision win. Izzy has proven to have a very good takedown defense of 86%. However, this can be different in the light heavyweight division because Jan is much, much heavier, and I'll come to that later. He won against Paulo by chopping his legs up again and again and again until the point that Paulo could not uh, put proper strength on his leg to land his punches, to drive his punches through, and thus losing the fight. Powerful leg kicks. Both fighters in this match have very powerful kicks, and it wouldn't be a surprise if both of these start with very heavy kicks. Jan, in fact, predicted that he would finish Israel Adesanya with a head kick in the second round. Both these fighters have been very active in the second round, having a substantial amount of knockouts, knockdowns in the second round. So if I had to look for a round in this entire match, I'd be looking closely at the second and the third round. I would be very surprised if this goes the distance, but saying that this match could either be very aggressive, very heated, or it could be completely dull, like Romero and Izzy, where none did anything because both are counter punchers. Some of the disadvantages that Jan has that Izzy could take advantage of is Jan is very reactive to feints. Now, a feint is usually basically a fake. You fake a punch or you fake a kick. Jan is very reactive to these feints, and Izzy makes it a point to break his opponents on these feints. Izzy is a masterful feinter. If I had to give him one credit, it would be his feints. His feints have gotten him through most of his fights. So Jan has to be very aware of that. Disadvantage for Izzy, the only disadvantage I see in this fight is if it goes to the ground, mainly because we haven't seen anything from Israel Adesanya on the ground. Now, if the fight goes to the ground, Israel is a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So we still have to see what happens when the fight goes to the ground and how does Israel react to it. Of course, the only concern that comes in for me is even if Izzy is good enough, the weight makes a very big difference. Now, these two come in at different match weights. By match weight, I mean the weight they come into the match on the day of the match. The weigh-ins happen a day before the match, which is why it is super necessary to cut your weight then to rehydrate properly. The fight, of course, will be in the 205-pound division. However, Jan comes in at a weight of 220 pounds during match day, whereas Izzy comes in at a weight of 205 pounds, which is exactly the light heavyweight limit. This gives in a leeway of 15 pounds, roughly 8 kgs, which can make an entire difference, be it the power or the speed, which works for Izzy because he's technically lighter than the opponent in front of him. Eventually, this becomes a match of who reaches who first. Now, Izzy, uh, as good as Jan is in his close range fights, Izzy is also pretty good, and he has a very big range of motion in his back and in his hips, which means that he can really bend in his hooks or his punches to land in with full power during the match, even if they are really close. One good example of this is Izzy versus Robert Whittaker, where they were literally standing against each other, but Izzy managed to land a full hook because he contorted his body so much to the right and then landed the right hook on his right flush on his face, which knocked Whittaker out. In the end, points to win, I'd say Jan. Both of them have to stick to their own fighting tactics. I don't feel anyone has to change what they do. Jan has to be heavy in his kicks as usual. I'd say he could use the fight. He could use the techniques he used against Dominic Reyes, but on a more refined level. And Jan could keep his title and give the first loss to Izzy Adesanya. However, Izzy has to be more aware of the punches landing on him. It can't be as leeway as middleweight where the punches land and you can still roll with it. If Kelvin could get Izzy down, Jan certainly can land the right punches at the right time, and Izzy wins and becomes double champ, making history again. The fight will be happening in the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada, which has a smaller cage than the usual cages used in MMA matches. The usual cages used are 30 feet, whereas the cage in the UFC Apex is 25 feet, which makes it smaller and much less space for running. So I expect a lot of fireworks in this match. Of course, that is not the only match on the card. We also have Amanda Nunes versus Megan Anderson for the female featherweight title, and Peter Yan versus Aljamain Sterling for the bantamweight title. All of these fights are really powerful, and 259 is stacked, and I mean it's stacked. It has Islam Makhachev versus Drew Dober. It has Dominic Cruz versus Casey Kenny. It has it has a lot of fights. Is what I mean. I'll put the whole card now right over here. I'll put the whole card now. It's right here. Yep. This will of course be streaming in India on on Sony 10 HD and Sony 10 in English, and I guess in Sony 10 in Hindi. The matches start in at usual time. Uh, I do not remember the time, so I'll put it here again. Yes. Thank you for watching. If you do like the breakdowns, then consider subscribing and sharing it with your friends. Again, I tell you, 2021 is the best time to come into MMA because there are a lot of good fights coming in. The same month we have another pay-per-view which has never happened, uh, which has Stipe Miocic versus Francis Enganu, the rematch for the World Heavyweight strap, and also Alex Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega. A lot more fights coming in. Spread the love of MMA and signing out.